Hi, and welcome to another ACTP training. Today we're going to go over the 4M's, which is memory, mindset, metacognition, and motivation. Try to implement the 4M's during tutoring sessions to provide not just tutoring, but also additional skills needed to perform better academically. Tutors should use the 4M's to identify how they can improve their tutoring, but also emphasize to the students that meaningful learning is improved through the 4M's. This presentation is just going to provide an overview over all the 4M's and how they are used. So the first M that we are going to go over is mindset. Students might have an innate or fixed self-conception on what they are capable of. This is going to be called a fixed mindset. Tutors need to be mindful of the mindsets and use motivations to change a negative mindset into a growth mindset. Students who demonstrate avoidance when they have a fixed negative mindset will end up putting off doing important things. For example, when faced with completing a major assignment, students may want to vent to a tutor by saying, "Why should I bother doing this? I'm just going to fail anyway." To properly know how to respond, tutors need to know the 5 characteristics for both growth and fixed mindsets. The 5 characteristics are challenges, obstacles, effort, criticism, and success of others. The difference between fixed and growth mindsets is that fixed mindsets are static, and the student will respond the same way, often negatively, to each characteristic. Growth mindset is critical for learning because they're fluid and grow as the students face challenges. Going back to where the student states, "Why should I bother doing this? I'm just going to fail anyway." The student is looking for confirmation that they are correct in the fact that they should not try. In this scenario, how do you believe it is best to respond? When talking about fixed mindsets versus growth mindsets, fixed mindsets lead to a desire to look smart. Therefore, they have a tendency to avoid challenges. When coming to obstacles, they give up easy. Effort is often seen as fruitless or worse. Criticism is often ignored or used as useful negative feedback, and the success of others is threatened by, and they are threatened by the success of others. When it comes to growth mindset, it leads to the desire to look smart, therefore a tendency to challenges, embrace others, obstacles, persist in the face of setbacks, efforts, see efforts as a path to mastery, and criticism, to learn from it. The success of others is finding lessons and inspiration in the success of others. Some inspirational quotes to promote growth mindsets are, "We do things not because they are easy, but because they are hard." John F. Kennedy. "If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." Henry Ford. Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Thomas Edison. The next M is going to be memory. Utilizing different strategies for students to retain information as they prepare for assignments and exams. So there are going to be 8 memory techniques for retaining information. In order to properly memorize information, students need to prepare and plan ahead prior to any study session. The first step is to organize the information. This is going to be outline and chunking. Next is going to be making association, using the existing knowledge to connect the new information. Next is going to be using images, graphs, charts, maps, and images. Next is going to be creating mnemonics, acronyms, acrostics, and rhymes to memorize information. In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Next is write it down versus digital notes. Students might have higher retention when they are writing compared to typing. Next is say it out loud. The student can read it out loud to themselves and repeat as necessary. Next is engage in active recall. Then is spaced repetition. Active recall. This is one of the most effective methods for studying, and if possible, should be paired with active learning strategies, such as spaced repetition. So the goal is to utilize the methods of active recall that saves time in studying by utilizing the following methods. First is flashcards. The students can make their own or find digital resources like Quizlet. Students can create Jeopardy-style questions, but the key is to have a term on one side and the answer on another. With the digital age, students can use apps like Quizlet or their phone to create digital flashcards, and they are just as effective. Next is generating questions from notes or textbooks. Students can create their own questions and on a separate page write out the answer. Students can also use their textbook to find and review questions at the back of a chapter that can be reviewed with answers found on the back of a book. Next is practice tests. Students can request practice tests from the instructors who may have old tests that they are comfortable sharing to review the information. This is effective because in addition to reviewing similar questions that are on the test, the students can see how exams are structured and what the instructors are expecting. Students might also find practice tests online. Next is teaching someone else. The students can either find another person, pet, or inanimate object to practice on, or teach the material that the student recently learned. Next is spaced repetition. This is a style of learning where the student reviews the material at a spaced interval over a period of 2 weeks. What the student does is, after going to class, actively listening and taking notes, they create a schedule over 2 weeks where they review their notes. Create outlines or questions that review the material within 24 hours of going to class. The structure from the beginning to the unit until the exam is created by their own study guidelines, outlines, flashcards, and study materials that they are actively reviewing leading up to the exam. The structure used is 1, 3, 7, 14. It is important that the students incorporate active recall and spaced the review sessions longer than the original time that the students learn the information. The most critical step is any new information reviewed within 24 hours of learning it and adding it to the spaced repetition cycle listed above. The students have a firm grasp on the material. Students who utilize this method strengthen their study skills, and once understand how to structure the material, it becomes adaptable and flexible on the days they utilize and to primarily study and review the material. Next is metacognition. This is the ability to think about and regulate your own thinking process, and to think about one's thinking. Students that practice metacognition know thyself and understand their own learning. Students may not know what to do when faced with a learning challenge, but the most common issue is that students won't know how or where to start the assignment. The vast majority of students will experience a false start, where they will look at the problem for a long time before attempting the problem. In Bloom's taxonomy, this could also be understood as the student does not fully remember a foundational aspect of the problem and is preventing them to make the first attempt. Students should inspire to improve metacognition knowledge in the following ways. Number 1, knowledge of the task. Understanding not just the type of problem, but the knowledge that is expected to have in order to complete the problem. Number 2, knowledge of strategies. Understands how to solve the problem. And number 3, knowledge of self. The student is aware of knowledge they have and also their emotions as it relates to the subject. How can tutoring improve metacognition? First is planning. How are we going to solve the problem? Next is monitoring. Monitoring the student's process and provide feedback as needed. Next is evaluation. Evaluate the student's success in solving the problem and the ability to work independently in future problems. The tutor should use open-ended questions and address the students by planning. Ask the students where they have seen similar problems before. What strategies should they use to solve the problems, and what resources have you used to attempt to solve the problems before? Allow the students the opportunity to review independently in notebooks or textbooks. Next is monitoring. For 2 to 5 minutes, let the students work on their own problem. Observe the students attempting the problem and sticking to the plan that they created and attempt to solve the problem. Does the strategy appear to be working? Is the student making progress on solving the problem? The tutor can approach to check and ask using an open-ended question, such as, how is the problem going? Or do you need any help? Tutoring should use open-ended questions by evaluating the problem. Check with the student to verify that they solved the problem on their own. Did the strategy they used work in solving the problem, and does the student feel confident that they can repeat the process? Is the student confident about moving on to the next problem and attempting it on their own? And does the student feel that they are able to repeat the process by themselves? If not, return to the first step and have them attempt a similar problem by using the same strategies. Allow the student to reflect on their own learning experience before moving on to the next problem. With this process, tutors are trained to facilitate a student's learning through the process above. Tutors should aspire to use metacognition in their tutoring sessions because it allows students to learn at their own pace and students can help multiple students in a small group and allow students to think at higher levels on Bloom's taxonomy. Next is motivation. Tutors can use motivation to help create a positive atmosphere for learning. This is one aspect of tutoring that can help make a difference between the student dropping out of class or staying until the end. Tutors are powerful motivators who, through creating a positive atmosphere for learning, are able to inspire confidence in students, learning potential, and most importantly, validate their expectation for success. There are two theories that tutors need to understand on motivation: self determination and expectancy value theory. Self-determination theory links to personally motivated and high performance. It is important that the tutor understands the four types of motivation: intrinsic, extrinsic, autonomous, and control. Intrinsic motivation is motivation that comes from within individuals. This is this is the person who's motivated by their core values, personal interests, and sense of morality. This is where perceptions of the ideal self comes in. Next is intrinsic motivation. This is where the external motivation for students in an academic setting that are primarily motivated by grades, but can also be achieved through rewards, certifications, and respect of their own fellow students. This motivation also encouraged conformity with others. Next is autonomous motivation. This comes from the internal and external sources and how it overall relates to their sense of self. Last is controlled motivation. The individual acts for rewards or fear of punishment. There, there is a lot that tutors can learn from self-determination theory and how it can motivate students in their tutoring sessions. Next is expectancy value theory. This suggests that students are motivated by two things: expectancies for success and the value they place in learning the skill. A tutor can directly motivate the students by using this theory by, number one, reaffirming and confirming that the students can in fact learn the material. And number two is reinforcing the values associated with learning the material. Attainment, which means reminding the students why it is important that they do well in the class and can even appeal to the students' desire to want to do well in the class. This recognition will receive, this is the recognition that they will receive in addition to what they will get out of completing the class, and it is just as important. Next is utility. Relate it back to the major or future professional goals that these students have. You could also add a real world connection as to why this is important outside of the classroom. In conclusion, the 4M's are an invaluable tool that tutors can reflect upon. Tutors will be able to continuously improve their approach to tutoring, studying, and learning. Tutors can foster the belief that intelligence and abilities can be improved through effort and learning. Tutors will be able to motivate students, and they are more likely to actively participate in the learning process.